Hello and welcome back to Leader Up, a podcast of Army Management Staff College. Leader Up is a professional conversation where we discuss a broad range of leadership and leader development topics with an emphasis on the Army civilian professional. I'm your host, David Howey. And on today's episode of Leader Up, we have an absolutely outstanding guest. And our guest today is a highly distinguished and highly accomplished member of the Army's Non-Commissioned Officer Corps, and this is Command Sergeant Major Jason Porras, and he is the Command Sergeant Major of Army University. So, Command Sergeant Major Jason Porras, thank you for being with us today on Leader Up.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege and an honor. Thank you very much.
And thank you, and I'm sure that our Leader Up audience is interested to hear your thoughts about Army civilians and about leadership in general. And so I want to start with just your background in the Army, what you've done, and maybe a little bit about why you came into the United States Army.
Sure. So first of all, I've been in the Army for, I hit 26 years next month. Joined as a 42 Alpha, so Human Resources NCO. And I would say the reason I joined the Army, to be honest with you, it's kind of my family business. Both my grandfathers are retired NCOs. They both retired as Sergeant First Class, so it's kind of what I know. Those are my two role models, my two people I look up to more than anybody else. So for me, it was a no-brainer to join the Army. Some of my assignments worked back and forth between both the TRADOC and the FORSCOM realm. Most recently, my battalion CSM time, I was the Special Troops Battalion for the 1st Armored Division Sustainment Brigade. And then my brigade time, I was the Commandant of the NCO Academy up in J. Bear, Alaska. And, of course, right now I'm an Army University Sergeant Major. So education's important to me, and as well as the Civilian Corps, they're important to me as well.
And for you, after you came into the Army, at what point did you realize that this is something that I, number one, enjoy, and number two, this is something that I think I'm good at. I think I can be successful in this career?
Right. So I think those answers, there's two different answers. When did I know? I'd say almost immediately. My first assignment was to the 82nd Airborne Division. That brotherhood, the camaraderie that I experienced when I first got there was nothing. It was something like I've never experienced before. So I loved it right away. When did I find out I was good at it? I don't know the answer to that. I think I always did the best that I could, trying to follow at first, and then when I became a leader, lead, teach people what I know, not keeping secrets, being genuine, and I don't think I paid much attention to whether I was good at it or not, but I enjoyed it immediately, and I think as you progress in the military, I think it's those times where soldiers, after they're not serving with you anymore, and they reach out to you for advice or thanking you for what you've done for them in the past, that's when you start to realize you made an impact. So I don't know about being good, but that's when I know I've made an impact, when people continue to reach out. So I think that's just been throughout my career, but I still have the same passion and drive that I did when I was 18 years old that I have now.
And let's talk about Army civilians, because that's kind of the focus of our Leader Up podcast. And just for you, as the Command Sergeant Major of Army University, which has a lot of Army civilians, talk about the importance that you see in leadership and leader development for Army civilians. Absolutely.
So I will say that the Army civilians are crucial to our mission. We could not accomplish our mission without our Army Civilian Corps. And when I look at education, you got the three domains: the institutional, operational, and self-development that applies to the soldiers. And it's very structured for us. And there's coming here, I didn't know the similarities between the officer and enlisted. They're very similar. Like we have the Common Core developed down at Fort Bliss for the enlisted folks, and then we developed that for the Captain's Career Course here at Leavenworth. And it's progressive, and everything is well thought out. And of course, there's curriculum changes to everything based off of the Army adapting. So I was very well versed in education, especially enlisted PME, and the importance has always been there. There had to be a significant reason why a soldier was deleted or deferred for going to their PME. And almost no reason was good enough. If you were scheduled to go, you were going because that was tied to a promotion, tied to career success. So we always push for them to go. And I would say one of the things that I noticed, I would say probably my previous assignment as the commandant of the NCO Academy in Alaska, all the emphasis I had on enlisted PME. Of course, you're training soldiers, specialists to become sergeants. And then our instructors, when they had to go to their ALC or SLC, whatever MOS they were, emphasis also placed on that. I was not aware of the same opportunities or just the system in place for the civilians to get their education, if I'm being completely honest. And that's, looking back, an improvement I could have made. And how I address that is I kind of relied on my ranking civilian there, and she managed everybody, made sure they were doing what they had to do. And if something came before me, of course, I'd support it and sign it. But I wasn't aware of all the opportunities that I could have afforded my teammates if I'd have known and been more well-versed in all the opportunities that are out there for them. For example, the intermediate course that is here, I didn't even push or encourage my GS-11 at the time to attend this course. If I had the opportunity to go back, I would obviously fix that. I'd rectify that, and I'd kind of push her to go. And it's not about even tied to a promotion or wanting her to do well. It's just it's owed to her as much time and investment that she put into the organization, the passion, along with the rest of my civilians, the passion and drive that they had, and their commitment. Every civilian that I've met that I know, they're as dedicated as the people that wear a uniform. So I think we owe them the same opportunities that the rest of us have.
And during your time as the Command Sergeant Major of Army University, you mentioned this a little bit, but what have you learned since you've been here about the role of Army civilians in the United States Army?
Sure. So first of all, we're comprised of many civilians in Army University, deputy directors, instructors. They're literally everywhere you go here. And when I said before, we wouldn't be able to function without them, we just don't have the manpower for everybody that wears a uniform. Not to mention, I think the biggest thing that the civilians provide is that continuity. A lot of them are in the same position for a long time. They become the experts. They're the ones that train the uniform people on whatever task or duties and responsibilities that they're getting into because they've been there and they know what's going on within an organization. Green suiters, we swap out every 2 to 3 years. So we go someplace and some of the things are similar, but a lot of the jobs we get into are completely different, and we got to learn. With the civilians there, they provide that continuity and tell us how things should be done, have been done in the past, and double-edged sword, how things have always been done are sometimes good, and then change is also good. But explaining the reason why they were done that way, I think if the change is going to be made, the civilians can say, hey, this is why it was done in the past. And then the leaders with commanding in the signature block can say, well, this is the way we're going. And as long as there's open communication, mutual respect, I think it plays a huge role in making an organization successful and being able to grow and adapt.
And I've heard it said that simultaneously the greatest strength and the greatest weakness of the Army Civilian Corps is that we are able to stay in jobs for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So we do have the continuity, but at the same time, sometimes we get a little stagnant in what we're doing. And go ahead. Go ahead. I'll let you respond to that.
I've heard that before. I view it as a strength, absolutely. I think being there for as long as they have, being invested in it, as long as the passion's still there, as long as they still care about what they do, not too many negatives come out of that, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong. I think you're right. The stagnation, being there too long, set in their ways. Sometimes the relevancy from, if you're looking at an instructor, for example, that used to wear a uniform, they've been away from a formation for an extended period of time. But typically what they're talking about still relates, still applies. And our civilian population is extremely professional. They're not sitting back, talking about their days past and the way they did it. They're also reading, going through different things to educate themselves. They keep up on Army policies and stuff like that, just like the rest of us. So if they're value added, they're absolutely relevant. Doesn't matter how long they've been there and the last time they wore a uniform. It's like everything though. There are some that, just like uniform people, that aren't as value added as others. But for sure, I think it's a huge strength having been in one position for so long.
And I think that point that you made a little bit a few minutes back is important. Is that I see things one way. I'm the continuity. I get a uniform person in who kind of wants to look at it differently. The communication is the key to finding out the best way to move forward and to engage with each other and talk about, why, what is the intent. And the history helps understand that, but sometimes having somebody come in from the outside to kind of shake things up a little bit is very helpful.
For sure, I agree. So, officers are the only one with commanding in their signature block. So I look at my civilian brothers and sisters as an extension of the NCO Corps. We don't have commanding in our signature block either. At my level, I'm an advisor, so I give the best advice I can. And you better believe that the advice that I give isn't all from my brain. I talk to the other subject matter experts. A lot of times those people, subject matter experts being civilians, I talk to them, get their input, talk to other officers that aren't in command, other NCOs. And then when I advise, I give the best advice I can, the best military advice based off of facts and that I can provide. And ultimately, a commander's going to make a decision, and we're going to go that way. And as long as we've all communicated, usually transition goes pretty smooth as long as everybody feels they've had an opportunity to speak up and say what they have to say. And then, we move on as an organization for the better.
And most people will say that they don't necessarily want to get their way, but they want to be heard and understood. And I think that can help that process. So let's go back to you said 23 years ago is when you came in, right around 2000?
26 years ago.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
26 years ago. So
97.
Okay, so the late 90s. Are you aware of, or have you seen the role of the Army civilians change in those 26 years?
I would say it's very similar to the way that uniform has changed. A lot more responsibility. Used to be tied to any pay grade on the enlisted side of the house. I think we're asking more of our soldiers today than we were back when I was a soldier, as a junior soldier. And I think our civilians are the same way, regardless of their pay grade or whatever it is. A lot more is expected of them as well. I think a lot of it has to do with our environment. It's a very complex environment. A lot of things are changing. We have to be adaptable, and just being able to do those things. And what drives that is war. Before I joined the Army, there was no war when I joined, so we kind of did the same exercises, same rotations. 82nd, I jumped in the same drop zone, dug the same foxhole, multiple times, rinse and repeat. And then, when we went to war, we found out certain things we were doing weren't best practices, or we needed to add to or take away from different things to the way we train, the way we fight. And I'd say the civilians also have to do that too. I mean, there's certain things that we did in the past, and it was, simplified. Now it's much more complex. So we're asking a lot more of everybody that supports the military, regardless if they're officer enlisted, warrant officer, or civilian. Everyone plays a significant role, and I think everyone's role has amplified compared to where it's been. And everyone's done a great job.
And we see a lot more civilians in leadership positions, and that kind of started right after you came in the early mid-2000s with the Installation Management Agency, which is now Installation Management Command, where principal staff people on a garrison staff went from being majors and lieutenant colonels to being GS 12s and 13s. And so I agree with you that Army civilians are asked to do a lot more in terms of leading, of exuding leadership. What advice would you have for your peer command sergeants major out there, or even officers out there who are in charge of large formations of Army civilians in terms of their professional development? What would you tell them now that you've learned in the past couple of years to help them help the civilians more effectively?
Absolutely. I would say learn the systems more, do your own individual research, reach out and ask those senior civilians on installation what they can do to help. Because if you don't, you're kind of doing a disservice to them. I mean, one of the things, as we discussed, that continuity that's there with the civilian, if a civilian employee feels like they're not valued, they might have been there for 10 years before you got there. The last thing you want to do is be the guy who forces them to up and leave because they feel undervalued or unappreciated, because that hole is going to be much more significant. You can't just plug it with another soldier because all that institutional knowledge is gone. So make sure you know your civilian employees know that they're valued, and one of the best ways you can do that is understand their systems. Not education-wise, but even their performance evaluations, the way those are done. You don't go into the Army system and do them. They're done completely different. And if you don't know how to take care of them to show they're doing well, at the end of the year when they're recommended for a step increase or monetary award or whatever those things are, if you don't take it seriously and show the same level of concern about taking care of them as you do your soldiers, they're not going to feel valued or appreciated. So I'd say understand the system, reach out, and if you don't know, say you don't know and figure it out. There's a lot of them know, though. I'd say that as many civilians as we have in the Army now supporting, a lot of them have been exposed to them before they become a command sergeant major. But for those, I was not one of those fortunate ones who had a lot of experience, so I figured out after the fact. And I wish I'd have spoke up more and said, hey, I'm not quite as familiar with this. I did learn, and I got to give a lot of credit to my XO back at J. Bear in Alaska that brought me up to speed on it. Most of what I know is because of her, and then coming here even opened my eyes even more.
And I know a lot of younger soldiers and even younger officers, their first experience with an Army civilian is that guy at CIF that wouldn't take your canteen cover because it had a thread hanging off of it. I don't know, did you ever run into that?
Of course. I think I think you're right. I think my first interaction with the civilian was at a CIF who kicked me back for, I think it was the canteen, not the cover, but the lid or something like that. So I think you hit it exactly spot on. Keep in mind, they got a job to do. You know what I mean? So if they're taking that as is and it's dirty, another soldier's getting it that way. Right. So even though they got a bad reputation for doing that, I think they absolutely should do that, because when I get issued something, I want to be able to use it immediately. And they kind of make sure they play honest broker with things that are turned in, can be turned around, issued, and used immediately. But, we like to point the finger when a lot of the times the finger should be pointed back at yourself.
Right. And that's the continuity, is to making sure the things are done correctly, the mundane stuff that helps the organization move forward. So let's kind of switch gears and talk a little bit about leadership. And the first thing I want to ask you about is a topic that I used to hear a lot about in the classroom that people were frustrated or didn't understand, and it's delegation. And why is delegation important, and what does good delegation look like?
Right. So I think delegation is a must in almost everything we do on a day-to-day basis, because if you don't delegate, you're trying to do everything and manage and supervise and lead everything all by yourself. And we've got phenomenal subordinate leaders out there, and allowing them to make decisions, accept prudent risk, exercise discipline and initiative, and do all those things that you would expect a leader to do, and allow them to make decisions. Also allow them to possibly fail, make a decision that's not in their best interest, an honest mistake, not one purposely hurting the organization. It makes them better. And the more repetitions we have with delegating, allowing them to lead and make those decisions, they're going to get better. And then when they are in that position where they're the leader and they have the opportunity to delegate, they can share their lessons learned and make their organization better. And I think you can't supervise everything. You can't be a micromanager. You have to allow your subordinate leaders to lead.
And how does that delegation, how does that build trust in an organization? Oh,
I think it's everything. If I have a leader that delegates a specific duty to me, task, responsibility, spearheading a project, champions, an initiative, that shows that they trust me to be able to do that at a professional level. And I take more pride in doing it. I want to do a good job because I'm representing them ultimately. And I think everybody wants to do well. Most people wake up in the morning wanting to do a good job. Nobody wakes up wanting to fail. So if someone delegates to you and they want you to do something and they trust you to do it, that trust that you have, it grows for that leader. And if you do a good job, hopefully that leader, it grows in your subordinate leaders as well. So I think, and if not, there's how you respond if you don't perform well. It's a learning opportunity. Your leader can, coach you up, tell you what you did right, wrong, and how to improve during the AR session. And you can take that advice and say, yep, acknowledged, and, work on those things, get a second repetition at it, get better. And I think that shows growth is what it is. So yeah, it absolutely builds trust.
And so delegation, what I'm kind of hearing is there's two components to it. The first one is taking stuff off my plate so I can focus on maybe bigger issues. But number two is developing that subordinate so that they can move up, or if I'm indisposed, they can get a job done that I need done, and if I'm not there to get it taken care of myself.
Absolutely. So I would say the development piece to me is key. You're right with both of the topics, but if you were only to have a shot at doing something when you are the leader, you wouldn't be very good at it. So you have to have repetitions when you're a subordinate leader, to someone else. If you're a, team leader, squad leader, you fall under a platoon, the platoon sergeant can't do everything. The platoon leader can't do everything. They got to delegate to their squad leaders and team leaders. Company commander and first sergeant can't do everything. They got to delegate to their platoon sergeants and platoon leaders. And the development piece is they're going to be in that job sooner or later. So give them a shot at it. Let them see how well they perform. Let them learn from experiences and repetitions, and make in decision making and leading in scenarios that perhaps they're uncomfortable with. And I think when they're at the level that you're at, they'll be better for it.
And my next question is about skills for Army leaders. This is kind of a nebulous question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If you had to lay down 3 important skills for Army leaders, so what would be the skills that an Army leader would need? And that would be officer, NCO, or civilian. What would, in Command Sergeant Major Porras' world, the 3 most important skills that an Army leader would need to have?
I think the first one is competence in whatever your craft is. So if you're an infantryman, you got to be an expert infantryman. If you're a medic, you got to be an expert medic. If you're a communications soldier, you got to be an expert with all the communications equipment. And I think that goes without saying. You got to be good at what you're tasked to do. You got to understand how everything works. Second thing is, I think you got to be genuine. Soldiers can identify whether you're being genuine or not. So as a leader, if you're trying to be someone else or not yourself, they can pick up on that pretty quick. So being a genuine leader, being authentic, so genuine or authentic, however you want to put it, I think that is a key one. And along those same lines, genuinely care. Don't just tell people, hey, I care, and then you don't answer your phone on the weekend because, at 1700 on Friday, you shut your phone off. When soldiers need you, they want to be able to reach you. So being authentic and genuine definitely matters. And then last one I'd say is the ability to listen. We're pretty good at barking orders. We're pretty good at giving direction. We're not always very good at listening. And some of the best ideas I've ever heard in the military came from someone junior to me. And things have worked out great because I listened and I said, that's a great idea. Let's give it a shot. And sometimes, it was a more efficient way to do something, or we got stuff done. So I'd say those are my 3 off the top of my head. I might be able to come up with better ones if I was more prepared, but I think those are 3 good attributes or qualities.
And so, leader up audience out there, I'm just going to recap those. Number 1, competence. Number 2, authenticity, and then number 3 is listening skills. Those were the skills that Sergeant Major Porras listed out for us. And I want to talk a a little bit about this article that you wrote for the NCO Journal back in September of 2022, and these are. And I'm going to let you talk about why you wrote it and kind of the background of this, if you can do that, and then I'm going to ask you about some of these specific points.
Sure. So the NCO Journal reached out. They're doing a call for articles to everybody. I wasn't the only person who wrote an article. There's some really good ones out there. They asked me if I'd be interested in putting together a top 10 list or of things that I wish I could tell my younger self, things looking back on my career that I wish I had known then that I know now. So I, came up with my top 10, put it together, sent it to them for editing, and next thing you know, it's published. So it was pretty good. So I enjoyed being able to put some thought into it, and I did. Some of them were, I'd say, a little bit humorous, but definitely important and serious at the same time. I may have wrote the line in there as being humorous, but it's definitely important and significant to me.
And we have we've put a link to this article for our Leader Up audience in the show notes for this podcast. So if you're interested in reading the entire thing, we have a link to it out there, Leader Up audience. But I wanted to ask about just a couple of these and get you to elaborate on them. And the first one is, you're not special, you're just old, and you've been around a long time. And just what do you mean by that? And what is kind of the example that you used in that to illustrate that point?
Sure. So I think a lot of people let rank go to their. I wouldn't say a lot. Certain individuals let rank go to their head, and they start feeling special when they reach certain positions, and usually it reflects in poor decision making. They think they're untouchable. They think that where they're at, they're held to a higher, not a higher standard, but a higher regard. There's a status associated with it. What I remind myself is the difference between me and a staff sergeant is I've been in for 26 years. If they are in for 26 years too, they're probably going to be a sergeant major as well. So it's not that I'm special. Someone's going to replace me when I'm done here. I've just been in for a long time, and everyone gets those opportunities at those positions if they progress. So you can't let your rank, position, or status define who you are. Who I was when I joined the Army is still who I am now. The values that I hold that are important to me still apply. The Army values still apply to me. I can't let where I'm at now, or if I'd have known then as I continued to progress, I think it would get a lot of soldiers out of trouble. If they keep remembering that they're not special, people have done that before them, people are going to do that after them. It's just that you've been around for the Army and you've earned it for sure, but at the same time, other people have earned it too. So the rules absolutely still apply to you.
And the example you gave in that was sandbags. So just tell me about how sandbags is related to that one.
Yeah, so I would say my last deployment as a battalion sergeant major, we were filling sandbags, and a lot of the times it was the work detail. It was our force protection guys. It was a bunch of junior soldiers filling them, and I said, nope, that's not how it's going to be. So I went out there as the battalion CSM. I started filling sandbags, and then I talked to it was one. Even in theater, we still have to do command of staff and stuff like that. So we were in there, and I talked to all my command teams, the company command teams, and I said, hey, from this time to this time, force protection is off the hook. They're not filling any sandbags. We're going to go out there and do it. It all looked at me like I was crazy at first, but I had company commanders and first sergeants out there alongside of me with fill sandbags to let them know, hey, look, still a requirement. The sandbags protect everybody. So we're all going to do our fair share, and we're going to fill them in. And we did. And it actually ended up being a pretty good time. Maybe a competition to see who could fill the most, and they appreciated it. And then when they saw other people filling sandbags, other people would join in. And it kind of trickled down. I would say there was a lot more participants doing it after that, just because they saw, other leaders out there doing it.
And the other one that I'd like to talk to you about is, and I'll read this one. If you get that gut feeling that someone wants to talk about something and they don't engage you, go and engage them. So just tell me about that one and maybe some experiences you've had with that. Right.
So I think most leaders that have been in the military have pretty good instincts, and I think that's because the way leadership is taught to us. As a Sergeant E5, you're checking to make sure your soldiers shave. You're checking to see give them safety briefs on the weekend, asking what their plans are. So you get to know your soldiers pretty intimately, especially as a first line leader. And then the more senior you get, the less direct leadership you have over soldiers. But you'll know from those times when you were that direct line leader when something's off about somebody. And it can be, suicidal ideations or, any of those things where someone just doesn't look right. And a lot of times they're not going to come out and say something. Now, if you ask or you ask questions how they're doing, they might slowly go down and ask things. And it doesn't have to be suicide. It can just be, something bad happened in their life. And just stop in and take a moment to let them know that you care and you listen to them. Sometimes they just want to be heard. Let them know what's going on. What they're missing when you're coming out on a Saturday to fill sandbags, going back to the last question or whatever it is, and then relating and being sympathetic to what's going on. It doesn't mean you have, they're not excused from duty or anything like that, but finding out why and talking to them and then letting them know they're important. I think that was kind of the point on that one.
And that's listening. You talked about the 3 skills earlier, and the third one was listening. And part of listening is observing and noticing people. And kind of like you're saying, when you notice changes in behavior and you don't hear anything from that person, go and engage with them.
And it's hard. Some people are easy to read. For example, I think I would be easy to read. If I ever showed up to work one day, it was quiet, didn't say anything, sat in my office and didn't come out, I think people would know something's wrong, right? They'd be like, you okay? But other people are kind of introverted, and those are the harder ones to read. So I think you got to spend a little bit extra time to talk to them and find out what's going on and see if that's just their personality, that may be. And a lot of times nothing's there. And a good TTP that I used, and this goes back to my entire time as a first sergeant and as sergeant major. One of the first things I do is I team up with the chaplain. And when I was deployed, we did battlefield circulation. I took my chaplain with me. And as we went through, we talked to people, and I gave the chaplain an opportunity to talk as well. And I'd say, hey, if anybody has anything for me, the chaplain, we'll stand by after we're done talking. And we just mingle and talk to the soldiers. And some of them wanted to talk to the chaplain specifically. Some of them, looked at him as purely a religious figure, and they weren't religious. They didn't want to talk to him. They talked to me. Oftentimes, they didn't say anything to either one of us. But then when we got back, we'd have an email from them, or hey, this soldier would like to talk to you. After we left, they didn't want to say anything in front of their peers. So I think just affording multiple people they can talk to, that worked for me. So one of the first things I did is I buddied up with the chaplain and forced him to go places I went. And if I found out he was going somewhere, usually I tagged along just to make sure there was 2 of us, so that two different people willing to listen.
And sometimes when you engage with someone like that, there are sometimes when it's something where you can take action and provide some kind of response. But there's other times when it's not really there's nothing that can be done to satisfy the problem. But the person, it's helpful just to have someone else to go to talk to and share their feelings. Do you agree with that? Is that?
I do, and I would say sometimes a lot of it goes back to communication. Soldiers don't understand why they're doing something, and they'll explain it to you, and you'll be like, "Oh, well, the reason you're doing this is, X," and they'll be like, "I had no idea that's why I was doing it." And then a simple conversation like that, their whole outlook on what they're doing completely changes. Or, hey, yes, this is something that's not fun. We all have to do it. We've all done it. Or unfortunately, you guys are the ones doing it, but it'll rotate. Someone else will get it. Just the understanding, the communication. A lot of people, once they have someone talk to them and listen or explain to them, a lot of times their outlook will change. But we're in the Army. There's some stuff that we do is just not fun. I've done my fair share of things that aren't fun, and when it's explained to me, or whatever it is, or sometimes I just vent. Sometimes I say something and get it off my chest, and then I continue to do the thing that's not fun. But by and large, I think that ups and downs, I've had a great time, and it is important to reach out and talk to them, though.
And the last one of these 10 that I wanted to get your thoughts about is number 8. People make mistakes, and most people don't make as many as you do. And just tell me a little bit about the importance of allowing mistakes, learning from mistakes, tolerating less than perfection. Why is that important for leaders to keep that in their minds?
Yeah, I would say every leader in the United States Army has made a mistake somewhere along the lines in their career. I don't think there's any perfect leader. Everybody's done something that's been a little bit bonehead. And the reason it's important, it's growth opportunity. When you make that mistake, it all boils down to how you react to it. It's not what you did. It's how you react and how you respond. Teams get better by failing oftentimes. When you fail at something, it's not a good feeling. Nobody that I know likes to fail. Nobody that I know likes to make a mistake. So when you do make a mistake, you want to get better. I think that's human nature. You want to do better at it. So allowing someone to make a mistake, assuming no loss of life, limb, eyesight, anything like that, allowing them to fail and then teaching them what right looks like and showing them and allowing them a second chance at it to get better. That's how teams grow. So it's growth opportunity.
And that kind of coaching process of younger soldiers or younger officers or Army civilians is important, where it's not just that you made a mistake and you get called out for it, but it's like you said, what does right look like? Why did you make that choice? And what can you do about it in the future? That's how people are developed and how they grow. Not just you made a mistake, I'm going to highlight it and publicly embarrass you for it.
For sure, and I'd say that without allowing mistakes to be made, and allowing people to recover, and it could be even a personal life mistake. They can make a poor decision in their personal life and they get in trouble for it. But without that. That would mean that someone goes, 15 years in their career without anything negative happening. And then when that one negative thing happens, it's catastrophic. So I think people, failing at smaller things that aren't catastrophic allows them to be able to adapt, overcome them, and get better. So I think certainly we don't strive for failing. That's not what I'm saying. We certainly strive to win and do good. But allowing people to become more resilient through hardships, I think it's important.
And the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is an experience that happened to me when I was on active duty in the Army. I was a company commander, and this was in 1989. And first sergeant walked into my office, and this first sergeant was a Vietnam veteran, as a lot of my NCOs were back then. And he said, soldier so-and-so was found asleep during CQ last night. Okay. We need to give him a company grade Article 15, okay? And one of the punishments that he recommended to me was, and this was an E3, he said, you need to take a stripe from him also. And I thought that was a little harsh, but he said he's a good soldier, he'll make it back, and it might be the best thing for him. And it's taken me since 1989 thinking about that, to understand the logic and the philosophy behind that. And I'm just curious, what's your response to that? Is that, help me understand the role in discipline matched up with making mistakes. Why is that important? And in that case, why would that have been the best thing for that soldier?
Sure. So I would say a couple things. First, when people make mistakes, and you being the company commander, it's kind of important to give similar punishments for similar crimes. And I don't know what the punishments were before you had to make that decision, but it might be this is the standard within the organization. If anyone else does it, this is what's going to happen to everybody. So it makes the organization better. Unfortunately, one person had to make the first mistake. But when it comes to making him better, you're taking something that belongs to him. He was an E3. He was a private first class because he earned it. It was his stripe. When you take it from him, it could be anything. Whatever belongs to you, if someone takes it from you, you want it back. So you're going to work harder to get it back. If you take something from me that belongs to me, I'm not just going to let you take it. I'm going to get it back one way or another. How do we do that in the Army? We earn it. So the way he got his stripe back and became a PFC a second time was he had to earn it. He had to get it back. And good soldiers will respond that way. Now, most of us recognize when we make a mistake. He knew he fell asleep, so he's not going to do that again, and he's going to prove himself time and time again to earn it back. So ultimately, I think when soldiers are punished, they respond one of two ways. They respond positively to it, even if it's a bad situation for them, and they're going to take back what was taken from them, and they're going through earning it. Or they're going to go to a downward spiral. But that's where leadership comes in. That's where we're talking to them. Hey, this is what you got to do. Even if they don't want to, hey, it could be we invested too much into you. We see potential in you. We're not going to let this keep you down. We're going to make you earn it back because we see something in you. We see potential in you. And just sharing those things, I think, are important.
And people, correct me if I'm wrong, but people want to be held to a high standard. And they want to know if they've met that standard. And if they haven't, it's helpful sometimes for people to see the consequences of not meeting a standard.
Sure. I think if you ask us who joined the Army because we thought it would be easy, I don't think any hands would be raised. We joined the Army because we thought it would be hard. We're tasked to do some difficult things. We signed up. We volunteered to do things that most people won't volunteer to do. We want to be held to a higher standard. We are proud of our service. We're proud of the uniform we put on. We're proud of it all. So, yeah, being held to a high standard, we all want that. We strive for that. Plus, a good story is it's not I went to work, nothing significant happened, I went home for the day, it was easy. That's not a fun story to sit around the campfire, tell your grandkids. You want to say, I went through X, Y, and Z. It was extremely difficult. Bad things happened. It was hard. I don't know how I survived, but I did. You don't want to be able to tell those stories. So being held to a high standard so that you can reflect back on those hard times, showing that you were able to overcome and be successful, I think that's important. Not, hey, it was real easy, did 20 years, nothing significant happened, and that's it. No one joined for that. We all joined because we're proud of the organization, proud of the United States Army, and proud of the organizations that we've been parts of.
And so, Command Sergeant Major Jason Porras, I really want to thank you for your time. Your time is very valuable as the Army University Command Sergeant Major, and I really want to thank you for stopping by and talking to us today on Leader Up. So thank you for that very much.
No, I really appreciate you guys having me. It was an honor to be on. Thank you guys very much.
And so, Leader Up audience, what did you hear today that you're interested in? Click on that link to the article that Command Sergeant Major Porras wrote and read through those items that we just talked about. And as he said, engage with your military counterparts and help them understand the importance of civilian education and the civilian education system, how people get enrolled for their CES classes, and make sure that your military counterparts are involved and understand that system. And thank you for listening, and join us again next time for another edition of Leader Up.
As always, if you have any questions or feedback or would like to learn more about our podcast, please check the description for our email and for our website. Thanks for listening.